thanks everyone for coming out this morning. This is going to be a really fun day. We're sure it's going to fly by. I want to pause and thank the American Leadership Forum, ALF, for helping us with this very important kickoff pilot discussion this morning, and I'll describe in a minute what we're hoping to achieve this morning and how what you're going to be doing is going to fit into a much larger conversation that will be taking place over the next several months. I also I want to thank Scott Syfax and Bonnie Herrera for helping us organize this and for their leadership in getting this pulled together so quickly. I think without they must be held in very high regard to be able to pull together such a high-level group in such a short period of time. And I want to say that for this pilot to work properly, we really needed a group of this size. If we had had 30 phenomenal people, we wouldn't really have been able to test what we're trying to test. It really required a meeting of this size to come together. So we really, really appreciate every single one of you being here and being a part of that. I also should, before I go any further, explain to you why I'm standing here instead of our fantastic Executive Director of California Forward, Jim Mayer. As you may know, California Forward works on a number of different fronts. We spend a lot of time focusing on civic engagement, facilitating public conversations on a bipartisan basis to really understand where the state needs to be going in terms of policy reform. But we have two organizations. I was introduced as the Executive Director of the Action Fund. We have a 501c3 California Forward and a 501c4, the California Forward Action Fund. And we're set up that way so that when we identify reforms that again, were formed on a bipartisan basis with input by a critical mass of Californians, we can forward them either through the legislative process or put them on the ballot, work with the executive branch, whatever the most sensible implementation path is, so that we can actually try to get these things done. And we filed last fall a couple of ballot measures dealing with state and local fiscal reform. We've been working very hard to get them qualified. In the end, we had to come to a difficult conclusion last week that we weren't going to be able to raise enough money to go forward with them, but it was our disappointment was dampened by the fact, or lessened, I should say, by the fact that at about the same time, the legislature, who we've been in very serious discussions with for the last several months, decided that they were very interested in trying to put these measures on the ballot in November. And they're actually on the Capitol steps this morning. They were starting at about 9:15, so a little bit ago, announcing that they're going to try in the next several weeks to get all of these reforms put together in a revision that could be on the November ballot, which is a great way for us to go because it saves us the money of having to qualify two measures, allows all of the support that we get for these things to go straight toward the campaign. You can get a better title and summary. There's some details that make it work actually really well if we can get these measures on the ballot. Before the end of the day, we have copies of an endorsement form for the reform principles that they're looking at, and some of you may already have looked at that and signed on. If you haven't yet, we would love for you to take this piece of paper with you, take a look at it when you have time, and consider endorsing and talking to any groups that you're a part of as well. So a little pitch for the work that Jim is currently doing on the Capitol steps. So back to this morning. I want to start by putting this conversation in context of what California Forward is trying to do. So, and I know some of you have been a part of discussions that Jim Mayer has had over the last year, so some of this may be familiar, and I'll just hit the high points. If I were going to tell you one thing that California Forward was created to do, it's to change public policy related to structural governance reform in California that has the potential to improve the quality of life of as many Californians as possible. So the outcome that we're really seeking through our work is better quality of life for all Californians. It's not simply to change the initiative process or change the way that we pass budgets or change the way campaigns are financed. It's to change whatever policies are necessary so that more Californians have more opportunity in this phenomenal, extraordinary state. In order to do that, there are two methods that are very important to our process that are as much a part of our mission as that ultimate goal. They are to make sure that in the way that we do this, we consider the best policy options available based on best practices in other states, based on the experience of practitioners, academics, all sorts of people who are experiencing problems around the state, all of these different things, based on what we know from past experience in California with reform. There have been a number of speakers commissions. The Little Hoover Commission has done many, many reports on how to make the state work better. There's a Constitutional Revision Commission in the mid-90s, and on and on and on. ALF may have been involved in previous experiences, so there's a lot of previous analysis and research that we also are looking at. So that being rooted in facts, previous experience, best practices is a really important fundamental of our approach to trying to move policy reform forward. The other very important characteristic of how California Forward operates is broad and deep civic engagement. And real civic engagement, when you're trying to connect people to the policymaking process in a state like California, is particularly difficult in a couple of different ways. If I could just pick two, and we could all probably come up with a list with 50 different items on it. But two items that I think would be at the top of that list are, one, in a state of 38 million people, it's just difficult to set up a process that's inclusive and manageable at the same time. A few hundred people even doesn't do it in a state of 38 plus million people. A few thousand, you may be just sort of at the tip of the iceberg if you can really get the word out and everyone knows what you're doing. Tens of thousands, you're getting a little bit closer. But it requires a very, very high volume of participation in order to do something that Californians across the state recognize as having been inclusive and having represented their voice, or having had a chance to, even if they personally weren't involved, for them to see themselves in that process. So that's one of our challenges. The second is to make that participation meaningful. And that's really stymied processes in the past. You can go out, you can tell people what conclusions you would like them to reach, and repeat it enough times that some of them start repeating it back to you, and often that counts as civic engagement. We don't call that civic engagement. You can go out and you can ask people what they want you to do, and you can get answers all over the map. Some are solutions, some are problems, some don't have anything to do with reform, and it's hard to figure out how to distill that. And so what ends up counting as civic engagement are highly simplified processes that don't feel meaningful to the individuals who are participating, and so they drop out. And then we think that they're apathetic. They're not apathetic. It's